Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, October the 10th, 2018, show number 1191. I am Shawn King.
I'm Melissa King.
On tonight's show, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple at The Loop at loopinsight.com about Bloomberg versus Apple and the CBC right here in Canada versus Apple. Bloomberg posted a story that just shocked the tech world. Turned out it may not be true in very weird kind of ways. We'll talk about that with Jim, along with the CBC did a predictable story that I wish they had done better. There's always been the claim that Apple charges far too much for its repairs, and that's a valid complaint. The CBC did this, I wouldn't say it was a sting, but set it up so that something was wrong with the computer. They brought it into an Apple store, and the guy in the Apple store said it was going to cost $1,200 to fix. They bring it to a different guy. He says it cost nothing to fix. So we'll talk about that story later on in the show. We're also going to talk about professional, moi, versus amateur, foo. We went out this past weekend and took some photographs, and Melissa took a lovely picture that was typical of an amateur. And we'll look at her picture versus my picture and what she was thinking and what I was thinking while we took the shot. And it's one of the ways that you can become a better photographer, and something I teach in the class, is think about your shot. Visualize the shot that's going to happen before you actually take the picture. We'll talk more about that a little later on the show. We took a big step yesterday. We're doing this in baby steps, but yesterday was a big baby step when we actually told your friend Krista, who is also a real estate agent, that we want to sell our home in preparation for moving to Australia next July
Or August.
Or now it's August, is it?
Well, in case.
Melissa is terrified, waking up at 4 a.m. in a panic, and understandably so. I think part of it is because, and you and I have talked about this, part of it I think is because I've moved so often, but I've moved myself so often. And I haven't stayed in one place for long enough to put down any kind of serious roots, where you've been here on the coast, Sunshine Coast, for what, 9-10 years?
Well, I've been in Canada for longer than I lived in Australia.
How long have you been here on the coast?
About 9 years.
And then in Vancouver, how long did you live in Vancouver?
15 years.
Yeah, so you're a very stable, settled person.
But we were in the Kootenays as well for 4 years.
So
Ontario.
But you understand what I'm saying is that you generally you put down roots in a place, and so to tear up those roots and transplant somewhere else, I can understand why that's scary for you. You're looking at me tilted.
Because it's to do with having children. You don't have children, so
they're part of the roots that I'm talking about.
Not understanding the magnitude of it when you have kids.
MacMan says it's a bit different than moving to Vancouver from there too. I'm trying to convince Melissa that it's just a matter of distance. I know it's not, but don't tell her. The other thing is it's a matter of language. We say things differently in Canada versus
not really
Australia. Well,
no.
Well, everyone in the IRC chat room knows what I'm talking about when I talk about that thing you sit on that goes back and forth. It's a seesaw. You know that, right? But there's another word for it. And apparently this is the word the Australians use because they think seesaw is a silly word. Melissa.
Look at Monty did it. I can't believe that I said to you that I wasn't going to do this, and you just slipped it in there. What are you asking?
What's the Australian word for a seesaw?
No, it's not. Seesaw is the Australian word for teeter-totter.
There it is.
Stupid. No wonder we don't call them what you call them in Australia.
For some strange reason, I've been doing this to her for a week now. She can't say the word without the giggle.
It sounds so silly with my accent.
I'm not making fun of her accent. I'm not making fun of her at all because I think it's sweet and kind and silly. But just saying the word.
Teeter-totter.
See? It's the laugh after that kills me.
It sounds ridiculous. So I'm not saying it anymore.
Ever again?
There we go. I did it.
Okay, good. Thank you. The seesaw, teeter-totter.
Yes.
But the other thing is speaking of language, and honestly, it is different in Australia. You guys have this weird habit of shrinking all the words, not Cockney rhyming stuff, which a lot of us have heard about. But Australians, you'll shrink words or you'll make up completely different words. What's a you know when you get we call rotisserie chicken here in North America, which is the cooked chicken you get in the grocery store.
Oh yeah.
What do you call it?
A cooked chook?
A cooked chook.
But I even noticed looking on the real estate sites now, it's got built-in robes, and that's wardrobes.
Oh, robes. Okay.
Yes. It's just silly to shorten those things.
And a gas station that's a service station where you can get food and stuff is called a Avro?
Oh.
Servo.
Oh, down the servo.
Servo.
Yeah. I went down the servo.
Because in North America, at least among the geek crowd, servos are little tiny engines.
Okay.
You know the little motors that run like Lego toys?
Right.
That can be called a servo.
Right.
So when your brother said, I'm going down the servo, like, what do you mean by that?
You'll be fine.
And the best one that took me almost the entire time to get used to it in Australia. I don't know if it's Australians or people in Newcastle, quite friendly. You walk down the street, people will say hi to you. And I'm like, why'd you say hi to me? I don't know you.
Aussies are very friendly folk.
But it's the good day mate comes out as one word. One syllable. Good day, mate.
Yep. Yeah, mate.
Good day, mate.
And it was so cute to watch my Uncle James teaching Rory. Okay, Rory, okay, it's your turn. And Rory go, okay, mate. And Uncle James would go, oh, good one. That's good. G'day, mate. G'day, mate. And there's a tilt of the head. G'day, mate.
G'day, mate. It's so funny that because when it first started happening to me, I'm walking on the street and
hey, mate.
What'd he say? It was just one word. It was one syllable.
You have to get good at that.
I'm not doing that. I will say hello. I'm Canadian. I'm not going to pretend to be Australian.
Eventually you will.
I don't think I'll ever get it right. Good day, mate.
No, that's pretty good.
So even for me, it's 3 syllables. Good day, mate.
Yeah.
You guys have one.
Have a few beer, you'll be fine. Have 10 beer and you'll be saying it right.
That's another thing that's going to take a while for me to get used to in Australia is the fact that I have to go to the bar to get beer. God, it's annoying.
It's fun going to the bar.
Annoying.
I'm surprised at you because going up to the bar and, and the beer's smelling like the center thing that soaks up all the beer and you talk to people and you get your beers.
See, there it is.
You don't mind talk. Gosh, when people come here, I can't shut you up. Blah, 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 blah. And and then he claims to not want to connect with people and talk to people.
Well, in our own home, that's different. I don't talk to people in bars.
Oh, it's not a bar. It's a pub. It's very different.
I don't talk to people in pubs.
You'll see. You will see.
But the way it works in Australia is there are no waiters or waitresses in a pub walking around taking your drink order. You want another beer? You go up to the counter to get a beer, which I find kind of annoying. Mm-hmm. Same with restaurants. A lot of your restaurants do that too. Someone will come by and take your food order, but to get your food, you have to go get it.
They're not working for tips.
I don't care. They're not working at all.
They're not working for tips. They're fine.
Why do they come?
We live above the poverty line here in Australia.
Why do they come and take my food order? It's not going to bring me my damn food. I don't get that. I found that really annoying. I remember the first time it happened in Australia, and we're sitting down and having a menu. Waiter comes over. I would like this and this. Thank you very much. And we're sitting there, and like 15 minutes later, Melissa goes, go get her food. No. You have to go get her food. No. She's going to bring it.
No.
She's like no. Yes, she is. She took the order. She's going to bring us the food. No, they don't work that way. So why'd you take the freaking order? I will never get used to that. Someone coming and taking the order without bringing me my damn food. I find that so annoying.
If Shawn opens a pub there, which is the dream, he said, I'm going to have table service.
Damn straight. If I have to immigrate,
the Aussies won't tip them, though.
That's okay.
So you better pay them well.
That's a really interesting. I remember seeing an article about this. Someone who lives in North America and works as a waitress, is really annoyed when people from other countries come and visit because you serve them, but they don't tip. It's not because they're cheap. 'Cause they're not used to
They
tipping.
don't know. That's right.
They don't know.
That's
they don't know how
right.
much to tip. Because in Japan, tips are refused. In Japan, they will give you back your money. In Australia, if you leave the money behind, they're not idiots. They're going to take it.
Of course.
But there's no expectation of tipping. Most of Europe, there's no expectation of tipping. They'll accept tips, but there's no expectation. And it's because they get paid a decent wage in most other places. I think minimum wage in Sydney is $18 an hour. Mm-hmm. Now, that's probably close to the poverty line because Sydney is an expensive-ass city to live in. But at least the perception for us here in North America is that's a good wage.
But you'll have lots of tourists in Sydney, and they'll tip. When I lived in Cairns, way up north, I worked 2 jobs. In the night, I was a cocktail waitress at a very busy resort, and I made so much money because they didn't know that and at that time, back in the late 80s, I was making like $10, $11 an hour.
Yeah. And then probably another at least $5 an hour on top of that with tips.
Oh, easily. And you didn't have to share them with everyone. So it was, yeah. But remember, it is to ensure proper service. And you even insist on tipping even when there's been minimal effort put into...
No. I tip according to the service I get.
All right.
If it's shitty service, you get a shitty tip. If it's good service, you get a good tip.
Oh, good.
You're because you're Australian, are just a shitty tipper.
I am not a shitty tipper.
You are a terrible tipper.
That sounds funny too. I am not.
Have we found another one?
I'm not telling you. Monty, there's a number. Your number comes up and then you know that your food is ready. Monty was wondering, how do you know when your food's ready? That's a good question. They put a number.
But the whole tipping thing is really interesting because, yeah, in theory, you should get better service because if everyone's making the same amount of money, there's no incentive to give me better service because you're getting paid the same regardless. If you're a shitty waiter or a great waiter, you're getting paid the same.
I'm sorry, you mean if you're
if you're not being tipped,
yes,
there's no incentive for you to do a good job, except for the fact people say that and I go, yeah, the incentive is the wage you're getting.
You've got a good job. You're probably in a union. Like if you worked at the Keg, you could work everybody worked their ass off, busboy, dish guy up, but you had to share all your tips with everybody, which I get, but that was tough. You'd put them all and you had this big pile of money and then they would distribute it.
I didn't like the idea of sharing it equally. I don't mind sharing a percentage of it. So say I cap as a waiter 75% of it, and then 25% went in the pool for back of the house folks, the bus boys and the dishwasher.
The dishwasher and all those guys.
I'd have no problem with that. But that sharing 50 or equally, I never thought that was fair either.
No, it's true.
The other problem with tipping is that, and this has been shown, there's been several studies about this, the more attractive the waiter or waitress are, the better they will get tipped. Which is why you'll see in a lot of not high-end places, but certainly a lot of other places, why people are wearing skin-tight clothing, whether it be men or women. Because it's been shown, blonde hair, big boobs, you get more tips than the brunette with small boobs.
That is so not okay.
I don't mind tipping on good service and not tipping on bad service. I don't like the expectation that I have to tip. But I also like the idea, and it's just an idea, that if you give me better service, if you go above and beyond, then I will give you a little extra money. But make no mistake about it. Remember, this is the owner of the restaurant passing on the costs of staff to you, the customer.
That's right.
They're going to do that anyway, though. If they make the minimum wage, if all the staff get, say, $10 an hour, $12 an hour, the price of the restaurant's going to go up. That's not coming out of his profits. Who's that? Is that your phone? Who's calling? That's your brother, isn't it?
No.
The most interesting waitress I ever met was a woman at the Washington Grill, which is DC Grill, a very famous steakhouse in Washington, D.C. We went there for an insanely expensive meal. But we went there on like a Tuesday afternoon. So it wasn't busy at all, so she had time to talk to us. And the person I was with had no class whatsoever, and so they asked how much money the person made in tips. This waitress made $100,000 a year in tips because of
and
the
she
place.
doesn't have to declare that.
Declare it because of the place where she worked. The tipping there was regularly $100 on
Yeah,
a meal.
on them. Yeah.
And she's making minimum wage, but if you're making if you got 3 tables an hour and they're tipping you $100,
Oh yeah.
and you're on an 8-hour shift, do the
Yeah.
math, kids.
Yeah.
She owned her own home, she had a nice car, and all that kind of stuff. So
She's a happy waitress.
she's a happy waitress. Folks, later on the show we're going to be talking about professional versus amateur. Melissa took a picture. I took a picture. We'll talk about the differences in the 2 pictures. But up next, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. This is your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. Thank you guys very much for joining us here on the Your Mac Life Show, episode number 1191. Our good friend Jim Dalrymple is joining us now on our phone. Jim, how you doing?
Doing good, Shawn. How are you?
Good. One of the most interesting stories I think I've seen in a long time, for a number of reasons, popped up last week. Bloomberg Business Week, the big hack. Bloomberg claimed that a number of tech companies were using or had used servers that had Chinese chips installed in them by the Chinese government. They said it was Amazon, it was Apple, it was Facebook. The FBI had been involved. The Department of Homeland Security had been involved. This was a blockbuster story. I read this with just like utter appalled that this kind of thing could happen. But shortly afterwards, all those companies started coming out with denials, which you would have expected.
Of course.
But Apple seemed particularly vehement. This is not we're not sure this is true kind of Facebook denial. We're sorry this happened kind of stuff. This is Apple basically saying to Bloomberg, you lying sons of bitches, this never happened.
Yeah.
What was your take on the story?
Well, obviously, it's worrisome that something like this could happen. And could the Chinese do something like that? I wouldn't put anything past them.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not saying that just about China. I mean, any of these, spy agencies, they can do some crazy shit.
Sure,
So,
absolutely.
but I think in technology, it's particularly easy for China to get away with it because of, that's probably where all this stuff is being made. So they just, put a little chip in there. And I don't know. But,
go ahead, sorry.
The fact that Apple was so steadfast in their denial, But of course, you have to be, don't you?
Yeah, I took Facebook and Amazon and Google and all the other companies' denials with a grain of salt. These folks have denied things before that have been proven incorrect. Facebook most notoriously, Google most notoriously have denied things happening and then gone, oh yeah, sorry, we actually do that. We're our bad. We're sorry. But Apple doesn't do that kind of thing. And
we didn't mean to lie.
Yeah, we didn't mean we're sorry you caught us. That's what they're sorry about, Whereas Apple doesn't usually get caught up in this kind of stuff, and also doesn't usually have these kinds of very strongly worded denials from any number of people. Apple's head of security, Tim Cook. They had the FBI saying that they had never heard of this report, even though Bloomberg said that Apple had contacted the FBI, and Apple's like, no, none of us did. But because the story was plausible, because we all think that this could happen or has happened in the past. Apple has, in fact, used servers from one of the companies that were affected, and fired that company back in 2017. So people were trying to equate the two. But Apple was saying they look for the exact... Apple may have let slip some very interesting tidbits of information, but because Apple was saying that we look for this kind of stuff on the devices that we buy from these companies. They basically x-ray them, and they know what every single piece of every single motherboard does, and they forensically examine them for these kinds of issues. Because it would be completely destructive of many, many companies to be found to be hacked by the Chinese or the Russians or the Vietnamese or whoever it might be. Apple's reputation for security and data protection is the highest of anybody, and it would hurt Apple, certainly, I believe, more than it would have hurt Google or hurt Facebook or even have hurt Amazon. Do you think that's true?
Well, it certainly would have hurt Facebook and Google, because that's one less party that they could have sold their information to. So, hey, wait. Why, are we losing out on selling this stuff to the Chinese government? Wow.
That's right.
Jeez.
Make a fortune off of these guys.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting story. And then now we also see another story pops up with a guy. The other thing, remember this story, folks, is that this is all anonymously sourced. Almost every single person in the article had no name attached to them. There were multiple, according to Bloomberg, multiple anonymous sources. And sometimes you can understand why they have anonymous sources, because the person's in a strategic or a secretive industry or job, and they really can't talk publicly. They
better be right, though.
Exactly. That's the key. You better be 100% right. And one of the guys that was named in the story has since popped up and said, yes, I was quoted accurately in the story, but I'm suspicious of the reporters that reported the story because of the way they reported it. Bloomberg, for its part, is standing behind its reporters on this. Do you think Bloomberg is standing behind the reporters because this is a true story, or are they doing it to save their reputation, hoping it all blows over?
Well, the fact that it's all anonymously sourced, you would expect a company like Bloomberg is going to fact check something like this, especially before it goes live. So unless those sources have come back and said, no, we were just fucking with you. Then Bloomberg is going to stand behind its reporting, of course, but I would hope that they would have enough respect for the institution of the press that if they did make it.
Did I lose you, Jim? I lost Jim. Let me call Jim. Calling Jim back.
Where'd you go?
I don't know. It just dropped off the thing. Sorry about that.
Okay. Well, that could have been me. I had my hand in my pocket. My phone was in there, so maybe I tapped it.
Tap something. That's right. I think that's part of the key of this, and the thing that's most interesting. This is not a story from 9 to 5 Mac. This is not a story from iMore, somebody that we can say, you guys are morons and you've screwed things up before. And without a doubt, Bloomberg is not perfect. They have screwed things up before, but they are generally good journalists who have a reputation for, even if they're wrong, fact-checking things and doing things the right way, which is what I think makes the story even weirder, that it's Bloomberg. It seems to have gotten this so incredibly wrong.
Yeah. Well, did they? I mean, that's what's up in the air at this point. I mean, you have Bloomberg standing as emphatic as Apple is that it did happen.
Yep.
So, I'm not saying that Apple is lying, and I'm not saying Bloomberg is, but there's a disconnect here somewhere.
Yes, absolutely.
And I tend to believe what Apple says, because in most of these circumstances, it's been proven that they have told the truth. So I, especially around privacy and everything.
Yes.
But it's so hard to say, okay, let's put together this server farm and we'll make these cloud servers and everything, and the Chinese are able to just slip a chip in there. Well, is that possible? I think it is. I do. But, geez.
Well, I think it's possible, but I also believe Apple when they say about their forensics on these devices and motherboards. All these motherboards have schematics, and you can look at the information security guys, look at the schematic and say, okay, there's a chip there. Look at the motherboard and go, okay, that same chip is there. We know what these two chips do. We can test them. And Apple has said one of the things that they went looking for in all of their servers is that the servers make what they call outbound connections. In other words, they phone home. They're seeing that these things are being ET and contacting other servers elsewhere. And Apple says that didn't happen. These servers did not do these things, and therefore, even if they were hacked, it's a useless hack because the information isn't leaving the server. So it's another example of the disconnect between what Bloomberg is talking about and what Apple is talking about. I think the other one... sorry, go ahead.
Seeing if a server phones home is a relatively easy thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm sure they're always looking out for that, and I'm sure all companies are looking out for that, because just to make sure that they're not hacked beyond this server chip. But did they say whether this server chip has yet to be activated, or I don't know.
Arkstein says, wants to ask a question. He says, ask Jim if it's curious that these Chinese manufacturing stories are floating as the U.S. is starting to press China on trade with tariffs. I don't think that's connected. Do you?
I don't think so. I mean, the whole trade war, honestly, is going to hurt consumers everywhere. It's going to hurt businesses, and as it hurts businesses, it's going to hurt consumers. Yeah. I don't know that one is really connected to the other.
And I think the other thing is,
unless they just want to make China look bad.
Yeah, but the other thing is these kinds of stories don't happen overnight. This is a story that apparently, according to the article, has been going on they've been researching this for at least a year. And probably writing it up for the last 2 months, checking sources and having lawyers go over it and all that other kind of stuff. So I don't think these two are directly related in any kind of way. I think it's completely coincidental that Arkstein said these stories are planted by the U.S. administration. Frankly, I don't think the administration is that smart to be able to plant these kind of stories. I think they'd like to if they could, but they just don't have the smart to do it. The other question I have is, how much faith should we put in Bloomberg? Bloomberg is a well-known name, but are they journalistically respected, in your opinion?
I think they are. I think that there's a lot of, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, Bloomberg, a lot of these people, AP, are respected. I think Bloomberg in recent years has kind of felt the crunch of, wanting to break stories.
Yes.
It's amazing that, sites like Mac sites can put the squeeze on a company like Bloomberg, but I really think they did. And they hired Gurman.
Yep, absolutely.
So I do think that they felt the squeeze, but this is a particularly big story.
Yes.
And, I have to think that Bloomberg defaults back to safety first when putting out a story like this.
Yes.
It's not like, some guy in a basement writing a blog and he can just say whatever he wants. It's not like that. I mean, I have to think that they go for integrity first, and I hope they do.
The end of the story has not yet been written. I don't think for a second that there's something is going to happen inside the next 6 months, and it may happen quietly, it may happen loudly, where either it's going to be proven true or it's going to be proven not true, and that's going to be a really, really interesting codicil to this story, because it can't be both. Someone's got to be wrong on this, and whoever is wrong is going to take a massive, massive hit, I believe, to their credibility, whether that be Apple and Amazon and Facebook, or whether that be Bloomberg.
Well, how do you prove this one way or another, though? I mean, definitively, Apple says it's not happening,
yep,
and Bloomberg says it is. I mean, is Apple going to open up its servers for testing, or how do you possibly prove this isn't happening? It's like,
that sounded like Jim just got shot. What? What the hell? Seriously, that did not sound good. Jim, you still there? Yeah, Monty says that was a gunshot. Hang on, that was all kinds of scary.
Hey,
you back?
I don't know what's going on.
Did you hear a sound before we got cut off? Jim? Oh, Jim?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me, Jim?
I can hear you.
Did you hear a sound just before we got cut off?
I did not.
Because I swear to God, it sounded like a gunshot, or you've been tased. It was a very weird sound. Just a second before you got cut off, people in the Monty says that was a gunshot. The bartender tased him. Did Jim just get whacked?
Wow.
It was It was a scary sound. Seriously.
It's Gurman on the roof next door.
Sniping at you underneath the bridge. Get under cover.
Or the Chinese government.
Something like that.
So it's one of these things. I could write a story and say, Shawn dresses up every afternoon in a clown suit and dances around his living room.
Yep.
And you can say, well, no, I don't.
No, I don't.
But how are you supposed to prove that?
That's right. Yeah.
I've said it. It's out there now. I can say an anonymous source told me, your son. but how are you supposed to disprove that?
Yeah.
You can say, well, I don't even own a clown suit.
Yeah.
Well, sure you don't.
The only way that's going to get proven is if multiple of the anonymous sources at Bloomberg step up and say, I told Bloomberg this information, here's my proof. And my proof
happen.
No, I don't think it's ever going to happen. You're right. Those sources are not going to want to have the hit to their reputation or jeopardize their jobs, because some of these people sound like they're going to be in positions of authority at other companies. And Apple can't prove a negative. Right. So I can't see this happening, just this story just dying away, because it's so important.
I don't see any other way that this can go.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. I really don't, because Apple can't prove something that they can't prove.
That's right. Yeah.
And Bloomberg is not going to prove something that they don't have to prove. Unless
somehow they get taken to court.
Well, and then what? They're not going to reveal their sources.
Yeah. Yeah.
They'll go to jail first.
Yeah,
they won't reveal their sources. But, in doing that, they have effectively harmed all of these companies, because now people are saying, whoa, wait, my information is, being sent home. to wherever home is.
Yep.
You know, I don't see any other way than this is just going to die off. Unless Bloomberg comes out with another story to say, you know, and this is happening.
Yes.
That'll bring it back up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
it's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Another thing was interesting. Our very own homegrown CBC, Canadian Broadcasting System, Corporation, has a TV show our nightly news here in Canada at 10 o'clock. It's called The National. We've been watching it. Jim and I have been watching it since we were kids. Peter Mansbridge was older than dirt. He just retired a couple of years ago. That's what the whole nation sat down at 10 o'clock to watch the news.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like America watched Walter Cronkite. That's who we watch. Yeah. We watch Peter Mansbridge. So the
unless that night Magnum PI was on, we used to watch
that. So the National was a very well-respected, well-known organization, very much like Bloomberg. The National had I don't want to call it an expose, but they had a story about this. CBC went to one Apple store, one Apple genius in Toronto, and had him diagnose an issue with the screen. You've probably already seen the video of this. And the genius came back and said it's going to cost you $1,200 to get this thing fixed.
Right.
For some bizarre reason, the National then goes to New York City. That's right there. That part of that confused me in the story. Aren't any guys from Toronto who could have done this for you? You had to go to New York for this?
I wondered how they ended up in New York City, but free flight or something.
Well, to me, it's they went looking for the person who would give them the answers they wanted. You know what I mean?
This guy is a well-respected repair guy.
He is. He absolutely is.
So,
as is the iFixit guys,
right?
Kent Weens. But this is the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation in Toronto, a city of 3 million people. You couldn't have found one guy in Toronto to do this for you?
I really don't have any issue with the fact that they went to the guy in Manhattan, because he is so well known, and he's put out videos that have millions of views.
Oh yeah, I've watched the videos. Yeah, I've watched the videos
and all of those stuff. So I to me, it meant that they were looking for the best person on repairs that they could find. Obviously, Kyle and this guy, I have no issue with that.
Yeah.
I really don't. I mean, even though it's CBC, a Canadian company, they do their reporting well, so they wanted to find the best, and I think they did.
Okay.
So,
what did you have? You sound like you did have issues with the story. What were your issues?
Well, first off, I'll be honest with you. When I saw what the actual problem with that computer was, I mean, it was clearly a setup.
Yes.
Because that pin was bent back, and there's no way that pin would ever get bent back.
That's one of the things that bothered me about the story was CBC never explained what they did. In other stings of mechanic shops, they say ahead of time, hey, this is what we've done. We pulled the carburetor out of this car. Right. Let's see if the mechanic can diagnose it properly. CBC didn't do that. I don't know if that was a slip-up or intentional on their part. Go ahead.
Yeah. I really think that it was obviously a setup.
Yes.
But, when you, as Apple, when you go in and look at this, I think that you should have been able to see that, hey, it looks like there's a pin.
Yes.
So I would have loved for Apple to be able to pick that out and say, hey, guess what? Look, we fixed it. It was a pin.
Yep.
No big deal,
Yep.
no charge,
Yep.
whatever. See ya. That I would have been very happy about.
And that's why I had a problem with it too, was they only took it to one store and one genius. They didn't take it to multiple Apple stores. Maybe that one genius was having a bad day. Maybe that one genius isn't a genius.
Well, then that's Apple's problem.
I think it's the story's problem too, because if you're going to paint the whole company as ripping off consumers, you can't just use one guy as the focus of that.
No, I get what you're saying, and it would have been good if they had gone to 2 or 3 different Apple stores
and gotten the same response from people.
And I get that. Yeah. But I also understand, and I wrote this in the thing that I posted the video. I understand where Apple is coming from
Yep.
in the fact that we only want our genuine parts in there, because what's going to happen is somebody's going to go to, you know, XYZ repair shop. They're not going to know what the hell they're doing. They're going to stick some cable on there that's going to blow the computer up, and then they're going to come back to Apple and say, "Hey, my computer blew up."
Yep.
You know, and I don't think that's Apple's problem, because you didn't get the genuine parts and you didn't have a genuine person do it. But if you take it to Apple and they blow it up, well, guess what? You owe me a new computer. So I think that I get that whole thing. Should Apple, this genius, have caught that problem? Absolutely.
Yes. Absolutely.
I think he should have caught that problem. If you're a genius and he said, "I'm going to take this in the back and I'm going to, either he looked at it or somebody looked at it, whoever looked at it should have caught that and said, huh, look at that.
Yep.
There's a pin loose from your monitor, which happens to be the one that controls the backlight." So, even simple things like the repair guy in Manhattan shone a light on the back of the computer,
Yep.
and you could see the mouse moving. So, he immediately said, "Okay, well, you've got movement and everything in there, so it's working. We just need to find out what's wrong with the backlight."
Yeah. Yeah.
And, he went to work, and it was like a minute and a half, and he was fixed. I do think the story was a bit slanted, but I still have to agree somewhat that why didn't the Apple guy catch that?
Yes. And I don't think the a lot of folks are calling this a hit piece, and it's if it is a hit piece, it's easy to do. Because it's always easy to say, well, you should charge me less for these sorts of things. And I'll be the first one to admit, I wish Apple would charge less. I've got a broken MacBook Air sitting here with a broken screen. That's going to cost me $700 to get the screen fixed out of warranty by Apple. No one else wants to touch it. So, yeah, I wish that things would cost less. But I do understand why Apple does it this way. But that being said, I also wish Apple wouldn't fight the right to repair folks so hard, because it makes them look like they're money-grubbing bastards about this. Wow. Why shouldn't I be allowed to have my machine that I bought, that I paid for, repaired by anybody I want? And then if I take it to an Apple store, to have the Apple store go, "Nope, sorry, someone else repaired this, we're not going to touch it. Take it back to that other guy."
Well, see, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I'm sorry, I do. Because if you take it to somebody and they screwed it up, and then Apple opens up that computer, then they're responsible for it. So if you took it to Joe Blow down the street, hey, I'm not going anywhere near that computer. No way.
And I think part of the problem is, does Apple know that Joe Blow opened up this computer? I don't know that they do, or that they would know that.
If they open it up and see third-party parts in there, absolutely.
Oh yeah. And that's when Apple hands you back your machine and goes, "Nope, sorry, we're not going anywhere near this." Remember back in the day, Apple wouldn't touch machines that had third-party RAM in them?
Yeah.
Even if you took your machine in to get the hard drive repaired, if Apple opened up the back of your machine and it saw third-party RAM in there, it would push the machine back to you and go, "We're not fixing this." And you'd literally have to pull the RAM out of it, slide it back to the guy and go, "There, now will you fix it?" "Yep, now I'll fix it." It's like, are you kidding me? Come on, Apple. Yep. I think there's a middle ground here somewhere. I think that Apple is on the wrong side of right to repair, and they could easily get closer to the right side. Not completely, but I think they could get closer, and they really should.
Oh, that's a tough thing. I mean, if you look at most of the people that are talking about right to repair, it's repair people.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So of course they want right to repair. It's an easy thing to say. I don't know that Apple's actually that wrong in what they're mandating for their machines. So, you know, it's a tough one. It really is.
If you haven't seen,
I understand the right to repair. I understand all of that, and I understand people have been building computers since the age of computers and all of that kind of stuff. But you know, the reason that Apple systems last so long is because of the components that they put in it, whether they're repair components or, you know, original
yeah,
components. So, and the second part of that story was on the iPhone battery slowdown,
oh, that was
and I've
silly.
made my thoughts well known on that.
Yeah.
That you know, I do not believe that Apple was malicious in any way on that.
I agree. But
Um,
you and I have talked about that when it happened. I do believe that Apple could have been more forthcoming and more obvious about it. I think the only thing Apple did wrong in that was not informing consumers in a more timely manner. I think the media took it and blew it out of proportion in a very easy way because it's an easy story to say Apple's doing this on purpose because we've all always thought that companies planned obsolescence. Everyone has a horror story of that TV that broke the day after the warranty was up or that
right.
toaster that broke the day after the warranty. We all think that's what happens. I've never believed that Apple did that, but because of
No.
that perception in the marketplace, Apple should have been a little more forthcoming with people and said, "Hey, we're doing this. We're doing it for your own good, but this is what we're doing."
Well, you know what's really funny about that? I went to my favorite bar last night,
Of course you did.
and one of the regulars that was there, we were sitting down chatting, and he said, "Look, my phone just—it's an older phone." He said, "Look, my phone just restarted again."
Yep.
And he said, "Do you know why?" I said, "Yeah, I know why." And I opened up the system preferences and showed him the battery and said, "Look, your battery's um, at 86% is all it can handle."
Yep.
And there was a note there that it just had a peak performance malfunction or whatever it said, and the phone restarted.
Yeah.
And I said, "That's your problem." And he said, "So I need a new phone?" And I said, "You need a new phone, or you need to turn this on, which will slow it down
Yep.
when it can't process properly, or you need a new battery. That's it. You know, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
That's what you need. It's an older phone." So he said, "Well, I was actually thinking about buying a new one." I said, "Okay, well, there you go."
I think part of it is that as technology has gotten more both ubiquitous and complicated, fewer and fewer of us understand how that technology works. People forget that batteries lose charge after time, or they never learned that batteries like this lose a charge over time. They're never always going to, for the entire life of your device, hold 100% of the charge of the electrons, electricity that it had when you
Right.
first bought it. And I don't know if that's Apple's responsibility to tell people that. I don't think it is, but
I don't think so.
people don't understand that stuff. They can't fix their devices. They don't want to fix their devices for the most part on their own. But when things go wrong, they don't know how to fix it and they don't know how to solve the issue. And when companies like Apple solve it on your behalf but don't explain what they've done, that confuses people.
Well, I think it's the media that confuses people, because the media jump on
Yep.
this,
Yep.
and they sorry,
That's okay.
um, uh, the media jumps on it, makes a horror story out
Yep.
of it, and I honestly, with all my heart, I do not believe it was the horror story that the
No,
media made it out to be.
I agree.
I think that Apple thought, "Hey, phones are restarting, and we just need to help people out. So let's put this thing in. Yeah, it'll slow it down a little, but the battery will last longer, and it won't restart on
Yeah,
people all the
that's right.
time." So
Speaking of the media getting things wrong, I don't know. I don't have an Apple Watch, so I don't know if this is true. Marco Arment over at marco.org wrote, "Why it's hard to read the time on the infographic." And he had a graphic of an Apple Watch, and he told people to take a look at this Apple Watch and see if they could see what time it was. So, folks, I'm going to put this up on the screen, and you tell me what time it is. it seemed pretty obvious to me very quickly what time it was on this graphic. And I don't have an Apple Watch, so I don't really understand what he's talking about. But is it true that, do you believe that this infographic, this Apple Watch face, is cluttered and confusing to look at?
No. I haven't seen Marco's.
Okay.
To be honest, but I'm looking at my own right now. I can see what time it is right off, and the screen is anything but cluttered.
I think it depends on what you put on the screen. I think that's the problem that I have with Marco's complaint, is that you chose this watch face. You chose the complications that are on this watch face. One thing I asked you last week when we talked about this, do you have to fill up all 8 of the holes, the complication spaces? And you said, no, you don't. So Marco has intentionally put 8 things on the screen that may be visually confusing, and therefore he thinks that it's difficult to tell the time. But everyone I've shown this picture to immediately looks and goes, no, it's 9:23. It's 20 after 9. It's not that hard to see the time. It feels like Marco is just making a complaint for the sake of making the complaint. If no other reason, then Marco, if you don't like the way the screen looks, change the damn screen, dude.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like that big a deal to me that, this is cluttered. Well, then unclutter it.
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly, I posted a picture of my screen face, my watch face.
Yep.
On Twitter. And that's what I've been using since pretty much day one. I have no issue with it. I really don't.
Now, Arxon makes an interesting point. He said, is it because that Marco doesn't know how to read analog watch hands? I don't think I don't think it's true.
No, I think Marco is actually a more of a watch person. So, no, I don't think that's it.
It was just one of those silly stories that so many of the usual suspects jumped on and are complaining about, that this is cluttered or that doesn't look good or those kind of issues. And I from what I've seen from watch faces from other people, to me those things don't look cluttered. I think that's a personal opinion. I think that it's fine for Marco to say, I find this watch face cluttered, but for Marco and John Gruber and others to say these are cluttered for everybody, I think that's just dead wrong.
No, I do not believe that. My watch face is not cluttered, and last night I even saw one of the new Apple Watches, the small one.
Yes.
Using the same type of watch face, but on the smaller watch. It didn't seem cluttered to me either. And I the only reason I really looked at it is to see what the smaller one actually looked like compared to mine. Yeah. Now, I had to put my glasses on to see it, but,
Now, that being said, there's another story that's been going around, I think it's a little more interesting than this one, that Apple so far doesn't let anyone else create watch faces. That if there's no developer, there's no one at Icon Factory or Panic or those kind of guys who can create their own watch faces. And someone said because they were concerned that it was because of copyright issues, that people would put Mickey Mouse or they would put Star Wars on these things and then sell them to other people, and then somehow Apple would get in trouble for that. Why do you think Apple doesn't allow alternative watch faces?
Well, I mean, we can go back to the old Apple way of doing things and speculate that they know best.
Yeah.
And, that's what everybody would like to say, I think. But, the fact that Apple could be sued for a trademark or copyright infringement, that's a real thing because people have done that with the App Store.
Yeah.
This app, you allowed this app on your store, and now we're going to sue you, Apple, because you have, $500 billion.
Yeah.
Well, so that's a real thing. But I don't know how people would sell those or, there's no doubt people would find a way. No doubt.
I think that
they would have Hermes or, some of these ones.
I think that if Apple wanted to do it, they could find a way, whether that be taking, you're selling them for 99 cents each and Apple takes 30% of that and they take that money and put it into a legal fund to fight off the challenges of these other companies. Apple would have their own lawyers look at it and go, no, that's a Mickey Mouse watch face. You can't put that on the Apple Store. It would have to be a very, very subtle copyright infringement. And Apple could say that, we're going to use these funds to fight off these lawsuits. And after a while, people would either stop including copyrighted info, or people would stop suing Apple. One of the two.
I just don't know that Apple wants to get into that.
I think it's Apple's well-known control issues. Not issues. Issues is the wrong word. But Apple's well-known love of control, and they want that symmetry that every Apple Watch looks the exact same. There was always the time, us old folks remember an app on the original OS 8 or OS 9 called Kaleidoscope. And what it did was it allowed you to change your desktop so your desktop looked like the Starship Enterprise. All your icons were in the Star Trek or were in the Star Trek font. The noise was Star Trek. It was just fantastic if you were a Star Trek nerd. If you were a computer consultant like me, it was a freaking nightmare because I couldn't find anything on your screen. And anecdotally, Steve Jobs hated it because he wanted everyone to see his beautiful desktop, and they eventually killed off those apps. And now you can't do that for the most part. You can't make those kinds of changes. And I think... Right
what
now,
was that? Res Edit.
Oh God,
you could change the sounds and everything.
Res Edit was one of the greatest hacks ever because anybody could do it. It was easy to do, and you could screw your computer up so bad.
I did on many occasions.
Oh, so did I.
I had the Monty Python voices as
right.
my stuff. Oh yeah, I did some nasty stuff.
You could have Grover jump out of your trash can and say that he's deleting stuff. It was the best. But when you screwed up, oh my God, it was a nightmare to fix.
Yeah,
it was awful.
Because you were literally going in and doing some crazy shit.
That's right, exactly.
Okay.
And I think Apple doesn't want that, both from a support point of view, but also just from a company aesthetic point of view. So I can't see them ever, as long as they keep giving you different watch faces that allow you to do some customization, and these complications seem to be a way of doing that. I don't think Apple really cares about people like Marco and those folks who want very specific kinds of watch faces.
Yeah. Oh, no, I don't think so either. I mean, I really don't.
Yeah. The days of Apple catering to a small crowd of vocal minority nerds are long past, and these folks are, for the most part, spitting into the wind and not going to get anywhere with this.
Yeah.
Folks, we've been talking to Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. When's the next Dalrymple report up, Jim?
Oh, I don't know, sometime. Tomorrow.
You can go to the iTunes store and do a search for Dalrymple Report, and Jim's podcast will pop up there. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Shawn.
Talk next week, buddy. See ya.
Bye.
Yeah, the Res Edit hack was just a fantastic hack. But when I became a full-time tech support guy, it was the biggest nightmare ever trying to figure out what hack you had on your machine so I could troubleshoot it for you remotely. So you'd say things like, okay, in the upper left-hand corner, there is this. And they'd go, no, there isn't. Yeah, there is. No. Upper left-hand corner, I have this. It's like, how the hell do you have this? Well, it's because I have the Star Wars Reset hack. Like, oh, come on. It was just a complete nightmare. Everyone's computer was different. It had different visuals on it. And so they weren't seeing the same things that you were seeing. And it was so annoying. I loved it on my machines. But God, I hate that. The Haxies, MacMan. Oh shit! What was that app that had Haxies? I think it was the app was called Haxies, Haxies. Oh yeah, they were a complete nightmare. After this short break, we're going to talk about professional versus amateur and what that means for your photography. All that and more coming up. This is Your Mac Life.
Hello, my name is Melissa King. I'm Your Mac Life's official spokes Australian. As Shawn begins his 25th year of broadcasting on the internet, he has asked me to say a few words to you all. Send money. What? Why not? More? Okay. When you listen to Your Mac Life, you'll notice there are no ads, no commercial breaks, No 5-minute ad reads for products you've already bought or have no interest in buying. That's because Your Mac Life is entirely listener supported, and not even listener supported via a paywall or a subscription service. It's simple. If you like Your Mac Life, you can pay for it. If you don't want to pay for it, you don't have to. You can still listen. On the top left, there is a subscribe to YML box. You can send any amount you'd like each month automatically from your credit card or PayPal account. It's set for $2, $5, $10 or $15, but you can set it for any amount by clicking the donate button. The best part is you'll barely notice it. It's $2, but it makes a huge difference to us here at Your Mac Life. It means we can pay for website hosting, internet access, new computers and software to run the show on, and so much more. So, if you like Your Mac Life, please subscribe. $2 will make a tiny dent in your wallet, but when enough people subscribe, it makes a huge difference to Your Mac Life. I'm Melissa King. Thank you.
Welcome back, folks. Thank you guys very much for joining us here this Wednesday evening. Why is there no Melissa in that video? What the hell? Or?
It's not been the greatest night for you, has it?
It really hasn't. It says Melissa in the video, but there's no
What's
Melissa
there?
in the video. Hang on. Is it this one? Well, crap. Add. All right, no Melissa. Sorry.
Should I go?
No, you stay right there.
Oh.
Well, so Melissa and I went wandering around. We're just going for a walk. Walking out our little town of Gibsons here in the beautiful. What are you laughing about?
You mean this little podunk town of
Podunk
Gibsons?
town of Gibsons. Wandering around, enjoying ourselves. And there was one of my favorite flowers photographically has always been sunflowers, because sunflowers quite often are either just one big gigantic single flower, and they're beautiful bright yellow, and they've got a gigantic center. They're easy to take good pictures of. Or you'll see sunflowers in a beautiful field of sunflowers, and so you see nothing but yellow sunflowers. I remember riding the motorcycle in Ohio, and we don't have sunflowers in Nova Scotia. I don't remember seeing them as a kid, but I remember riding around a corner and almost crashing the motorcycle, because for the first time in my life I saw a literal field of sunflowers. It wasn't 2 or 3 sunflowers somebody put in their little back garden. It was obviously a sunflower farm, and it went on seemingly for acres and acres and acres, and it was beautiful. I'm riding with 6 or 7 people, and I'm at the back of the pack, and I pull over and I stopped so I could look at these sunflowers and take pictures of them. They were so pretty. So Melissa and I are wandering around, and I saw up against a fence these 2 sunflowers. One very, very tall sunflower. It was probably 10 feet high, 10, 12 feet high. And then one at about 4.5, 5 feet tall. So about Melissa's height. And So I thought, I want to get a picture of my beautiful wife next to this beautiful sunflower. And then I said to Melissa, you take a picture. And I did this intentionally. I wanted to see what Melissa would do when she took the picture.
He wanted to see if I fulfilled his prophecy of taking a newbie's shot.
A newbie shot. And I was guessing in my mind what she would and she wouldn't do. And one of the things I was so proud of and so happy about is the first thing she did was she took my camera and she was going to take the picture, and then she looked behind me. And what did you say?
I said, I don't like that background. I don't want all those cars and people in there.
And what did you do to solve the problem?
I moved.
Exactly. That is very important, the fact that you look behind the person you were shooting to see if there was a telephone pole or a guy wire or something in the background. For you, it was a parking lot of cars that you just didn't like as a background of the shot. And the fix was simple. You simply just moved over half a foot,
I did,
a foot maybe,
I cut it out completely.
and just gave it a different angle. And then the other thing that you did, and I don't think you did this intentionally, was you held the camera in portrait mode,
Yes.
the long mode.
Well, yes.
I usually shoot landscape, this mode. But because it was a tall shot, you shot a tall image. Now, I don't think you did that on purpose. I think because for the vast majority of people, that's the most natural way to hold the phone and take a picture. Which is one of the things I tell folks is if that's the way you're most comfortable taking a picture, put your camera, shoot in what's called the square mode. Because with the square mode, it's usually meant for Instagram, because Instagram, for whatever reason, wants all their images to be squares. So in the square mode, it doesn't matter which way you hold the camera. You're always going to get the exact same square of the shot. There's less creative freedom that way, but it doesn't matter how you hold the camera.
Well,
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I didn't do landscape because I thought it would get what I had just avoided.
Okay. So you did think that you did shoot that way intentionally.
Well, am I correct in that if I held it in landscape, I would have gotten the cars and the people that I moved away from
Possibly,
potentially
yeah,
in the
possibly.
shot? But I would have moved closer. There. Sorry.
So here's the shot Melissa took. And so you can see, that's Mount Elphinstone behind me, isn't it?
No.
What's that? What is that? A mountain behind me?
No.
Okay, whatever.
That's a hill.
Anything taller than I am is a mountain. So Monty, that's a big flower. That's right.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
It's a huge flower. It's very,
Yeah.
very tall.
Beautiful.
I loved
big
it.
Russian sunflower.
And a what?
The big Russians, if you buy them to plant them, they're called the big Russians.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
I thought sunflowers were sunflowers.
Well, but you can get sunflowers that will only grow
Really?
little, and they're related to other flowers like the black-eyed Susans or the Rudbeckia, the beautiful yellow flowers. So
I did
some
not know that.
Well, I've grown them, and some of them are much bigger than others.
Well, I did. I thought the ones that were bigger than others were just bigger than others. I didn't realize that there was a reason for them. One sunflower being much taller than the other. I didn't know there were different kinds of sunflowers.
Yes.
Macman, does that sunflower have a face? It does not have a face. I think I can zoom in on this too. Let me just see if I can't zoom in on. Oops, that's not a zoom. Apparently not. So this is the shot that Melissa took, and it's a perfectly okay shot. You did exactly what I knew you were going to do. One of the things that beginners tend to do is when they see the shot that they're looking at, their feet get nailed to the ground. They stop moving. They walk to a spot. That's pretty. And as soon as that thought hits them in the head, they stop moving their feet. The first mistake that Melissa made is just not physically moving closer to the subject. I always tell my beginning students, get as physically close to the thing you want to shoot as you possibly can. Just walk as close as you can to get that shot in your head. One of the other keys is to visualize the shot in your head that you want to take. In other words, close your eyes and see the shot, imagine the shot in your mind's eye, and then manipulate the camera, the light, the person, the situation to get that shot. So when you close your eyes, the shot I had imagined was I wanted the sunflower to be right over top. I tried taking the same shot with Melissa, and I wanted the sunflower right directly over top of your head, which meant getting down at a very, very low angle and shooting up. The problem was Melissa is so tiny and the sunflower is so tall, all I was getting was boobs.
Actually, you did say that.
The angle up was just boobs.
Oh.
Boobs and sunflower.
That's a bit weird.
It wasn't going to work for me. I'm sorry. I love both, but it wasn't going to work for me.
Could it become a famous art piece?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. So for you, if you had walked closer into the shot, you would have gotten closer to that image of the sunflower sitting on top of my head. Now, if you'd walked closer and then maybe scrunched down a little bit, you could have gotten the sunflower directly over top of my head, which would have been a cute shot. But that was my shot, not your shot.
All right.
I don't know. Did you shoot this off center of the sunflower intentionally, or was that just?
Well, there's a few things that I'm always aware of. And one of them is now my grid. My grid is a very automatic thing for me. And making sure things aren't in the center of my photograph. The zooming in with my feet isn't quite there yet, obviously.
Yes, because the other downside of this image is that there's too much unnecessary sky. The sky behind us is boring. There's nothing there. There's nothing of interest to look at in that sky. There's no big puffy white clouds. There's nothing there. Mm-hmm. So either by cropping with your feet, moving closer, or cropping in software in the iPhone or Snapseed or something else, you could crop out that unnecessary sky and also kind of zoom in a little bit. So it was interesting to me anyway to see that you did some of the things that we had talked about both here on the show and for with you and I personally, and some of the other things you didn't do, and that's fine because what it means is that you're learning some things, and we need to practice doing the other things.
Well, it's a beautiful representation of learning, actually, I'm finding this process. Because learning, you have to, some things resonate with other people differently. So some people might have already consolidated their zooming with their feet, but they haven't quite. It shows me how people learn things differently, and how you have to make some things a habit before you can make room for more learning. You know what I mean? That's
an interesting way to put it. But it's definitely something that I see from people and want to see more is making that a habit, practicing it so much that that's automatic, that you see this stuff. The first thing I do, or we're walking down the street, and I don't know if you even saw the sunflowers. Did you?
Well, I looked over at the community garden, and I said, there's a nice community garden, remember?
Yep.
And I think then we just became interested in the church parking lot or something.
I looked over and saw the sunflowers, and because I love sunflowers anyway, I immediately thought, I wonder where I distinctly remember thinking to myself, where is the picture in that shot? What's the image that I want to get? That's a beautiful sunflower. Where's the shot in that sunflower? And for me, it wasn't the tall one. I tried the tall one. It just didn't work. But I knew there was a shot in there somewhere. And sometimes to me, it feels like, and I don't mean this to be as pompous as it sounds. I remember, I think it was Michelangelo, and it could be an apocryphal story. Someone said, how do you see a statue in this piece of marble? You've got this big square of marble. How do you see the statue? And Michelangelo said, I just chip away until the statue comes out. I chip away everything that isn't the statue. So to me, there's places and times where I go, I know there's a picture here somewhere. I just have to find the picture. I have to stand in the right place or do the right thing. And so for me, the picture was when I tried the sunflower one and it didn't work out. For me, this was the picture that I saw. And this was the picture of, my beautiful wife next to this beautiful sunflower. It was the light. It was your purple sweater that I love so much, your red hair, and the yellow of the sunflower just made me go, wow, I love this.
It is very
colorful. I love this shot.
It's funny. It came out on Instagram in the other direction. I guess that doesn't matter, does it?
Oh, in here, it's flipped around.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So that's the shot I saw. Before I took this image, if I close my eyes, this is what I've envisioned in my head. But the other thing that's important about this stuff is that these colors were not in the shot on the iPhone, because the iPhone, as we've often talked about, as I've often said, your camera can't capture the dynamic range of colors that your eye can, that your brain can. So I saw more colors with my eye than the iPhone saw with its sensors. So that's where it becomes important to take that shot. I should be able to find it. Let me just see if I can't find the shot. It's important to take that shot and then edit that shot. You're not going to get the shot you visualize straight out of the camera 95% of the time. It's not going to be as good. Let me just really quickly see if I can't airdrop this to myself and then show it to you guys. I should have done this before. My apologies. But it's important that you remember the shots that you visualize are going to be different than what the camera might see. Can you see the differences? On the original, this is the edit.
That's shadows.
It just
seemingly.
And what I did was real simple, and that's the other aspect of this that people think is difficult, but it's really not. It's simply a matter of going into your, and this was just the iPhone. It wasn't Snapseed or anything fancy. This was just in the iPhone, and just playing around with those sliders you see at the bottom. You don't got to know what the sliders do. You just play around and see if the slider does something that you think is interesting. Sorry, I lie. That was Instagram. I use the Instagram filters to do that.
I like the Instagram filters.
Some of them I do.
I have my favorite
Me
ones.
too. Yeah,
Definitely.
me too. And in particular with this one, I think what really makes it a big difference is the vignetting of it.
Yes.
The vignetting is that the four corners of the shot, you'll notice them here. Vignetting, I've darkened the corners, and it forces your eye to the center of the photo.
It really does. It's lovely.
It makes your eyes subconsciously go, okay, those parts are dark. I'm attracted to the bright, colorful bits. I'll look there first. So keep that in mind when you are doing edits and when you're shooting. Imagine the shot that you want to take. Visualize it in your head. Even if you have to close your eyes and go, okay, I can see my wife, my boyfriend, my dog, my cat sitting there, standing there, doing that thing. I can visualize them. And then see how you can move around, move the person. I told Melissa, go stand right there. And just scrunch down a little bit, get the flower right next to you. The way I manipulated the scene so it matched what I had in my mind's eye. But then I also recognize that the camera itself is going to take a I knew I could get those colors to the level that I wanted them to be, the brightness of them that I wanted them to be. So give that a try next time you're shooting. Again, I always tell people this: visualize the shot ahead of time. Crop with your feet, move as close as you can to the subject, but the editing is as important as the original image. I always believe that. I always teach that to people. Your shot is only halfway done when you push the shutter button. The other half is going to be in whatever edits you're going to do.
Can I ask a question?
You absolutely can.
So in the Apple portrait mode, if you have a portrait with beautiful rich colors in your eye, does it have an option to brighten those, or is it just do the dark background? And I don't look at don't know how many options there are in the portrait.
In portrait mode, there are, I think, 4 or 5 different options.
Oh.
And there's studio lighting, stage lighting, the black and white, that kind of stuff.
Oh, so it's not about having colors pop out
No,
or anything like
no,
that.
it's not.
Okay.
No,
okay.
it's only about light. It doesn't do anything with the vibrancy or the contrast or the vividness of colors.
Okay.
It's just to do with light. Good question, though.
I haven't ever used it.
I don't like the portrait mode.
Oh, you don't?
The fake lighting, because I know it's fake.
I suppose for some things it
and
works.
I've never taken a picture. For me personally, I've never taken a picture that looks good in the portrait mode. From Shawn Kruger. This might be a little bit long-winded. Hired to take pictures at an event for a political nonprofit. My wife and I photographed those events for several years. They have vendor table, sponsor VIP area, dinner, keynote speaker, all the usual stuff, local politicians, big donors, blah, blah, blah. They always want a mix of pose shots and random shots, people talking with vendors, showing how full the room is, blah, blah, blah. These are common shots for any event, business event. As I was wandering around the room, a woman came up to me. Usually people just ask where they can get a copy. I let them know that the organization will send out an email. This woman was not interested in any of that. I didn't take a pose shot of her table, but she was in a wide shot of the room. She came up to me and asked, how dare I take pictures of people without asking? I started to apologize, but was immediately shut down with a, no, how dare you?
Oh, my.
I explained that I was hired to take pictures for the event. She wanted to know who hired me and tell her the name of the organization, the event that she's attending. She proceeded to tell me she was a federal judge and can't have her picture taken. How dare you? Was repeated several times. This woman was shaking with anger and right in my face. She noted my name tag and said that I knew her name and she knew mine. She wasn't wearing a name tag. I didn't know who she was. She was rambling something about how she gets death threats and contacting federal protection. I didn't even know that's a thing, if she was actually who she said she was, or she was just crazy. I tried to be as apologetic and professional as I could, but she was not having any of it. At her demand, I did delete a picture that had her face in it, but I don't know if she may be identifiable in other crowd shots. I have never encountered that kind of reaction before. I mentioned the next day to my contacts at the organization that hired me, and they were sorry I had to deal with that and thanked me for my work and professionalism. I'm not sure where the line between being out in public and being at a venue event that is semi-private is, and what the actual laws are about any expectation of privacy at such an event. But in my mind, in an event like this, or a wedding, or the like, I would expect that there would be photographers there present. There was another person doing video. If I had that kind of aversion to being photographed, I wouldn't attend this kind of event. I don't believe I was in the wrong, but it was a very uncomfortable situation. You never know what you will run into. Shawn, what an interesting story. The first thing I would say is that you were hired to do this event. So the company who hired you owned the shots that you, unless there was some other agreement, by the way. I'm assuming it was work for hire, which means that the company owned the shots. You would have signed a contract with them that said, I give the copyright of these images to you. So they're your responsibility. So you don't have any legal problem with this. Most of the time, the law would say there is no expectation of privacy at an event like this. Even though it was semi-private, it wasn't a public event, you weren't in a public space, it was the kind of event that a reasonable person would not have an expectation of privacy. If you did have that expectation of privacy and went into the room and saw photographers, it then becomes incumbent on you to leave the room, not to tell the photographers, don't shoot this face. The photographers don't know. You can't expect every photographer to know everybody who has security threats against them in any particular room. That's just silly. When you deleted the photos that belonged to somebody else because you're doing work for hire. And they may have had a problem with it, depending on the photo. They probably wouldn't, but it's certainly a possibility. For example, the White House photographer is legally not, the official White House photographer is legally not allowed to delete any of his photos. Every single photo, all the bad ones, he's not allowed to get rid of because they are part of the public record of the White House, a federal government entity, and therefore owned by citizens of the United States. They don't show the bad ones, obviously. They only put up on Flickr the good ones. But all his photos, all the official photographer's photos are kept for, 50 years, have no idea how long they're going to keep them for.
Mm-hmm. Until the president's dead.
Well, even then, they still have to keep them. So I think that what Shawn did was completely professional. It certainly sounds like it was completely professional. I don't know that I would have handled it better than him. I almost guarantee I wouldn't have. I would have been a lot more belligerent. I would have been a lot more unpleasant. It's like, lady, you don't want your picture taken? Wear a mask. This is a public event. Get out of my face. Federal judge or no federal judge, get away from me. I'm taking pictures. Right? You're not a part of the mafia. You're a judge. And if you have security concerns, you shouldn't be out in public in general. Interesting story, though. What would you do if someone walked up to you and said, delete that picture that you just took of me?
Well, I don't jump to that. I think straight away maybe it's this day and age, people taking photographs every nanosecond. There's phones. And maybe now, even though something is a public event, but if you are in those circles where you're going to these big events and there's official photographers, maybe everybody needs to give consent somehow to say, yeah, I consent to being photographed. And if the company doesn't get consent from everyone, then they need to make it clear to that person.
But companies will say if you didn't read the fine print of a lot of these documents, you've already given consent.
Well, if that's the case, then no, she doesn't have any right to do that. I'm just wondering about people's knowledge, that's all.
Well, if she's a federal judge...
Oh, no, she would know by law.
She should certainly know.
Her knowledge of knowing that there's going to be lots of photographs taken and that she was in them.
I have deleted 2 photos in my life when it was demanded of me that I delete the photo. One of them was in Italy in a museum, and there was a really neat shot of 2 of the security guards just standing around talking. And I guess one of the security guards, no, sorry, not security guards, the
policeman. You're not allowed to, are you?
Gendarme? That's not gendarme. What's the name of the police in Italy? They've got like 18 different levels of cops in Italy. Crap. Cabinieri? No. Something like that. Anyway, these the local city police. And I don't remember what it was about them that attracted me, but I thought it was the picture looked really kind of cool, so I took the picture. And I guess the cop heard the shutter and turned and just did this to me. And I very sheepishly walked over to him, and he looked at me and he went like this, and I was like, sorry. And he said, delete. And so I was, scusa. And I showed him the photo, and I deleted the photo. The other one was, as a Mac man says, both in Paris. The other one was at the Apple Expo in Paris. And I'm just trying to find the photo now. 2005. Apple Expo in Paris. We're walking around the day before the Expo. And that's the day that Apple is, all the vendors are, trying to get the picture. All the vendors are setting up their booth. And Apple's booth always has this great big black cloth around it. I'm trying to show you guys this picture of the black cloth. And I thought it was kind of cool that Carabinieri. Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome,
That's
Shawn.
what I was looking for. Carabinieri. So there's this black cloth. I knew whatever Apple was announcing was behind that black cloth. I took a picture of the black cloth. And this security guy, he wasn't a cop, security guy, comes over and he's screaming at me in French. I have no idea what he's talking about. He is not a happy camper. But he's just little sawed-off shit. So I'm like, I'm not scared of you. I'm not worried about you. And he calls over 2 more security guys. These 2 security guys were in uniform. But I knew they weren't cops. I knew they were just security. And one of the guys started translating. And the little officious security guy said, you can't take pictures of that. And I'm like, it's a black cloth. Like you can literally see nothing behind this black cloth. And in every single gap of the cloth, Apple had a security guy standing there. So you couldn't even like peek through the cloth.
Wow.
So I'm like, there's no, you can't see. I'm laughing, thinking this guy's just utterly ridiculous. And he is just very, very pissed off at me. And he's saying to me, delete that, delete that, delete that. I'm saying, I'm not going to delete the photo. He said, if you don't delete this photo, we're not going to let you into the Apple Expo tomorrow. I'm like, shit, I have to get in there. I'm being paid to cover this. So I was just like, oh, fine. And I showed him the photo, and I deleted the photo. I'm there. Happy? He went, get out. So off I go. I tell Jay Curtis with me, Jay, I've been kicked out of the expo for the day, so I'll meet you outside. And Jay was like, all right, see you. Dick. So I go and sit in a rock for like an hour. Go grab an espresso and sit on a rock. And Macman, that's why you get booted out of the expo hall. But I have this picture. The security guard knows nothing about cameras and didn't realize that I had a dual slot camera. So rather than having one card in the camera, I had two cards in the camera, and I had the cards, I had the camera cards making a duplicate image. So I had two every image, and this is my backup image. Screw you, official security guy. I got my shot, you bastard.
Wow, look at that. It's black cloth.
I know. I was literally going, why are you yelling at me? It's black cloth. But yeah, they and he was wandering around the show floor. I saw him a couple other times for the rest of the week, and I was like,
hey.
He gave me a dirty look of
He didn't want to even.
No, he didn't acknowledge me.
No.
Didn't even acknowledge
his job very seriously.
He was taking it very, very seriously. Quite seriously. I took a video with an iPhone. This is from Steve. I took a video with an iPhone 4 running 7.1. Ugh, Jesus. And downloaded it to my Mac running 10.13 using image capture. The video shows up as the .mov file and plays nicely on my Mac. I'd like to email it to someone who might have any particular fairly current device, Mac, PC, Android phone, or iPhone. What video format is the most likely to work on all platforms that QuickTime Player can export to? Steve, if you've got QuickTime 7, it will export into an MP4 format that most likely any device, any person you send it to can watch. I don't know QuickTime. I think QuickTime 10 will also export to MP4s. The easiest thing to do, though, Steve, is simply upload it to YouTube. YouTube will do the conversion for you. It'll hold the original file there, and then anybody who goes to the URL that you send them, no matter what device they have, YouTube will give them the right file format. So that's probably the easiest thing to do, is simply upload it to YouTube. Because the other issue is if you want to email this file, you don't say how big the file is. The one of the things people don't realize about video is quite often the files of video are huge. It could be a 1-minute video, but it could be multi-gigabytes. And you really don't want to email someone a multi-gigabyte file onto their iPhone or onto their Android phone or onto their desktop. So uploading it into the YouTube video is probably the easiest way to do that. As always, if you have any emails, send them to us at onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. We got winners from last week. Melissa forced me to give away
a book. We did The Lonely Planet. Then Matt Cleaner.
And Matt Cleaner.
And Mo, I'm sorry I didn't respond to your Twitter. I didn't get your tweet.
That was weird. I don't know why you didn't get it.
But thank you, Mo. I'm going to encourage that the chat room can do that. Yes. No. Why?
You can't just willy-nilly give things away to the chat room.
Why? I'll encourage people to be in the chat room. Anyway, I'm obviously not allowed to do it. Sure, she can, says Monty.
Of course Monty says that. Why the hell not, Mac?
Special, says Monty. You are special. I love you guys.
Oh, dear. Folks, what's something else we wanted to talk about?
Why the hell not?
Why the hell not? Yeah.
Sorry, what?
There's something else we want to talk. Oh, this was a very funny story. Just want to do this real quick. Where is it? Show files. This was a Reddit conversation. An iPhone addressed to my apartment just showed up. What do I do? Hello, a package just showed up addressed to my apartment. So I opened it, and it contained an iPhone. It looks like it's for the previous tenant who lived here over a year ago. What do I do with it? I'm posting here since this hasn't happened to me before.
Oh, you bloody keep it.
No, come on. Jesus.
I would. What's the matter?
There
I'd
are
sell
so
it,
many
probably.
problems. Are you kidding me?
What's the matter?
I had no... Are you serious? I had no idea my wife was so amoral.
Well, I don't know if I'd have a conscience. Like, I wouldn't sleep well for a while and could potentially change my mind.
Yeah, MacMan, send it back because they can track it, easily disable it. First of all, he opened mail that wasn't addressed to him.
Well, but he might not have even looked. He might have thought, oh, package, cool, and just opened it and not looked at
Bull.
it.
Everyone
No,
looks at the address.
I have opened things of Damon's that are not mine because I haven't looked at their name on the thing.
If you are expecting a package, that's fine. But if you're not expecting a package, you open a package, it shows up, that's illegal. It's illegal to open up mail not addressed to you regardless,
Yes,
accidentally or not.
Yes.
Monty says, if it showed up in the USPS, you're legally allowed to keep it. No, you're not. If it showed up accidentally, in other words, that it was sent, if you got it accidentally, misaddress, there's a reason, there's a way of doing it. That's right. If you contract with a company to send an iPhone, they send you 2 iPhones, you're legally allowed to keep the second iPhone. But this was a misaddressed package. You are legally obligated to do what you can to get it back to the post office. Just like found money. You're legally...
But you would keep the found money. You're being all high and mighty here. Sheesh. You wouldn't keep the iPhone. Shawn King, you wouldn't keep the iPhone.
As MacMan says, I'd send it back because they can track it and easily disable it.
Well, fine, but you if you found money, you would be stealing the money.
They can't track it.
Ooh,
They can't disable money.
We talked about that, though, about potentially tracking money. Mm-hmm.
The first thing is the first problem is you open up a package that wasn't addressed to you. So that right there, you're in trouble.
But they can come because, a package is being tracked to you. You go, I'm sorry, I haven't seen the package. I don't know what you're referring to.
No, see, because something like an iPhone, you have to sign for it. They're not going to leave an iPhone just at your front door.
Oh, I see. But usually the guy is supposed to say, oh, hello, are you Melissa King? And then you go, oh, yes. So he must have said, yes, I am that person.
See, this is what I'm saying.
Well, it's a bit calculated, yeah.
Keep it. Unbelievable. Clearly they didn't.
You're not walking around with a shattered screen, dude. Okay?
You're walking around this. Yeah, I'm not going to get into that. Folks, I want to say thanks very much to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com for joining us here this Wednesday evening. Thanks to you guys for being tuned into the show, whether you're listening live and in the archive, listening live and in the IRC, or whether you're tuned in to the archive. As always, I want to say thanks to you guys for listening to the show. Until next week, as always, I've been Shawn King.
I'm Melissa King.
Thief. And you've been listening to Your Mac Life.
More prizes for IRC. More prizes for IRC.
See ya.
Bye.